This is Reasons We Serve, a channel dedicated to the women and men of law enforcement. This is episode 83, Jerry O'Shea, retired CIA officer. Jerry was recruited into the CIA in 1984. During that time, he worked undercover as an operations officer for over 3 decades. He served in Europe, Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East, as well as numerous war zones. He was a 4-time chief of station, running some of CIA's largest and most crucial missions abroad. During this interview, Jerry discusses why and how he began working for the CIA and discusses some interesting stories he was a part of while trying to recruit human assets. Jerry provides a fascinating look into the gray and blurred lines of being a CIA officer and tells an interesting story of how he broke the news to his children that not only was he a CIA officer, but their mother also worked for the CIA. He gives his personal opinion about Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, as well as his take on other intelligence agencies worldwide. Jerry is the co-host of the podcast Mission Implausible, which can be found on platforms such as Apple Podcast and Spotify, and is the co-founder of Spycraft Entertainment. This is his story. Okay, so for the audience, I am going to do an interview with an organization that I have not done an interview with so far. It's going to be very interesting for you. So with that being said, can you introduce yourself for me, please?
Yeah, my name is Jerry O'Shea, and I was an officer in the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, for 33 years.
Okay, so Jerry, we're going to post this in the description, but Jerry also is the co-host of the podcast Mission Implausible, and he also has a website called Spycraft Entertainment. Can you talk a little bit about your podcast and then what Spycraft Entertainment does?
Yeah, they should listen to mine, and then right after they should listen to yours. So, yeah, no, Mission Implausible. It's 2 agency officers, former CIA officers, John Cipher and myself. And as CIA officers, when we were still undercover, we occasionally got people to believe things that weren't true, right? So we conspired. Small things, though, like, that we don't work for CIA, we work for, the State Department. Or if you want to meet with a North Korean, you can't say, "Hi, I'm a CIA officer. I'd like to talk with you." You have to have a small conspiracy so that he believes perhaps that you're a businessman or something like that. So small conspiracies. So we know how difficult it is to do conspiracies. So we have a podcast where we look at conspiracies and conspiracy theories, and we deconstruct them. And what's true, what isn't, why do people believe them, and unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, conspiracy theories and conspiracies have become part of the American life. So we're trying to grapple with those as people who've actually done it.
Yeah, yeah.
We also have a Spycraft Entertainment. We have a company that's bringing authenticity to the espionage genre in Hollywood. And, there've been, I love Bond and Bourne as much as the next guy, but those are cartoon characters, right? I mean, they're fun and exciting, but they're not just like law enforcement movies. They're generally not the way it really is. And so we want to tell the stories for Hollywood and with Hollywood of the ordinary women and men of the intelligence community being asked to do extraordinary things, and sometimes getting away with it. But this is real life, and we all understand how things work, and not always doing it. So we're having real fun with that, and we've got I think we're going to have a couple of movies coming out, some features, and a couple of TV series. So in the not too distant future. So Spycraft Entertainment and Mission Implausible.
So with that being said, kind of bringing reality to movies and stuff. Man, I can't remember the name of the movie, but the one with Robert Redford and Brad Pitt. It was the CIA one.
Yeah,
you see that one?
Yeah, I remember it. It wasn't Sneakers, perhaps, but
it wasn't Sneakers. Sneakers was
that was Robert Redford. Yeah, it was with Phil Robinson wrote that one. In any case, that film that everybody else is looking up right now.
Yeah.
Yes. What about it?
Was that realistic?
No. So the problem with Hollywood is that some films get some things right, no film gets it all right, and
Hmm.
most of the films don't get any of it right.
Yeah.
Right. So the only beautiful woman with a foreign accent I've ever found in my bed is my wife, right, who's British, right? And I've served in a lot of war zones, but I've, with only a few exceptions, have been involved in kinetic activity, right? So that's really a rarity. And for CIA, if you're ever involved in a gunfight, it means you've, pardon this the audience, it means you fucked up, right? Our job is not to get involved. That's what the military does, or often law enforcement but ours is to provide intelligence. So no, they don't generally get it right. And I think a dose of authenticity would be really good. I think read before burning, or read after burning. I think get some of the craziness right.
Yeah.
That was with Brad Pitt,
Yeah.
and I think um, ugh, I'm blanking on we're drinking water in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah.
So
How about Argo? Was that for?
funny thing you should say. Yeah. So Argo is based on a real thing, and Argo is actually comes pretty close, I think, to a lot of the realities of it. With even with Argo at the very end, although it's based on or inspired by a true story, at the very end, and beware if somebody hasn't seen the film yet, but at the end of the film, right, there's this chase scene where the jet's trying to get off the ground and the guys are chasing him and firing their weapons. Like, that never happened.
Yeah.
What really happened is what you probably expect is
Yeah.
they went through customs, they got in the airplane, they flew out, right? It was like, yeah, we can't do that. We got to soup it up with a chase scene and a firefight, and like that didn't really happen.
But how about making the fake film production team? I mean,
That's part of, like, back to Mission Implausible. Those are sort of the conspiracies that we do bring together, and yeah, we do that kind of thing. We get people to think things that aren't true to accomplish a mission. We don't do it to, like, and there are strictures on us. We're not allowed to do it just for no reason, and we're
right.
not allowed to involve Americans in it. But abroad, to achieve a mission to protect the American people, yeah, we do engage in that,
Yeah.
and that's part of the fun of it too, right? And everybody's interested in the intrigue and mystery and the espionage. It's a secret organization. I do want to say that served 33 years in the agency. Your listeners might be thinking, so I have at the end of your career in CIA, which I did my entire career undercover, the agency now offers you the option of it's called rolling your cover back. So this is why I can talk about it now. So I'm not talking out of school.
Okay.
We would never talk out of school. And with Mission Implausible and all the ideas that we come out with Spycraft Entertainment, we are obliged to run those by the agency to make sure that they're not censoring us. They're just making sure that we're not unintentionally revealing sources and methods, right? That we're revealing secrets, which we don't want to do.
Right.
And so, so we're willing to talk about the agency, warts and all. And I have to tell you up front, I have a very positive sense of the agency, and I'm very, I'm a strong believer in the agency's mission still. So we can't just say anything we want, nor would we want to. But yeah, that's sort of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, and we talked a little bit about this before we started recording. Guys like Mike Baker, who's all over YouTube, and I watched another CIA operative yesterday on YouTube as well.
Bob Baer or somebody like that.
Yeah, something like that. And I was just like, obviously, I'm assuming that they have some sort of, they don't want to talk about the secrets and methods of operation and stuff, but when they go out there like that, do they talk to CIA beforehand to make sure they're not talking out of school, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we're as you'd imagine, we're not allowed to reveal secrets.
Yeah.
And that generally involves sources and methods. But the agency's pretty reasonable about this. I can't say, the Russian source I had in the Kremlin, his name is Valerie, and you can go out and murder him now. I mean, that's obviously
Right.
no, right?
Right.
But most things that the agency does, and most stuff is, I mean, I don't think I even know that many secrets anymore. I've only been out for less than 10 years. But we can talk in generalities about our lives, and sort of where we've been and in generalities about stories and things to give people a sense of it. But specific sources and methods that might impact on some of the important ongoing work that we're doing, we don't do. But other than that, the vast majority of things, I have to say, the agency has never, in everything we've sent to them, they've never said no, because it's really about counterintelligence,
Mm,
right? And that's not what we're looking to do.
yeah. Okay. Well, Jerry, tell me a little bit about growing up, your background. What got you interested in this? Was there something? So first of all, let's just talk about your background. Where did you grow up? How many family members, brothers, sisters, stuff like
Well,
that?
I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm gonna rejigger it.
Okay.
So the the CIA, it is the collector of last resort. So collector of intelligence, or it collects intelligence, and it also does covert action. We can sort of talk about that a little bit too. It'll do things the United States government wants done that are deniable, right? It's called Title 50. We can deny what we've done, right? Unlike the military, which can't. So we get the most intractable problems that the U.S. government has. Now, if the U.S. government can figure out if it can get what it needs on, say, North Korean nukes or Iranian missiles, right? Or, what's going on inside of ISIS or Al Qaeda, as they're looking to attack. If they can get that through diplomats, they can't, right? Because they don't talk to diplomats. If they can get that through the military, they can't. If they can get that through law enforcement, they'll use those channels. But when everything else fails and no one else can do it, and no one else knows how to address a problem, it comes to CIA. So that's liberating. I mean, like, no one knows how to do this. You got to go figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And do we know how to do it? No. We try to figure it out as well, right? And it's like, fuck, I don't know how to do this. Well, our job is to figure shit out. So who does that kind of stuff? We look for people who are comfortable with ambiguity. We look for people who can problem solve under interesting, difficult, bizarre situations, right? And people who can think quickly on their feet. So we don't look for that one. So we don't. So we look the diversity inside the United States is a real treasure trove for us, right? If you need an American who speaks Farsi and can pass for an Iranian, but also has a business degree and speaks Spanish, you know what? The American government, we can probably find that guy. And those are the sort of people we want, interesting people that can do that. And we say we're looking for PhDs who can win a bar fight, right? Or avoid a bar fight, would even be better. So those are the folks we look for, people who can do jobs that no one else knows how to do. And that means that we have a real wide group of people that do it. So for me, my personal journey dates me, but I'm an ex-hippie, right? So I'm one of 10 kids from a small town in upstate New York. We had one street right where I grew up, right? And we filled the entire pew at St. Leo's Church. And at 18, just barely 18, never been on an airplane, never seen the ocean, I got in an airplane and I flew to Germany. There's a lot of reasons why. Basically, I met a girl, right? And off I go. And I basically lived as a German for years. I learned to speak German. I worked in beer gardens. I worked on ski lifts. I studied at German university. My German got good enough. I matriculated into German university, going to school for free. And I thought, I'm not sure I really want to be a German, right? I mean, I've lived here for years, and German is sort of my first language. And for interesting reasons, with a buddy of mine, we decided to smuggle cars into Iran, which we did, and which we went to jail for a little bit. And the Iranians, this is just before the Shah fell, and things are going bad, and we smuggled with some BMWs into Iran, and then we went to Afghanistan, where I loved it. And to be frank, I smoked a lot of dope up in the mountains and had a Belgian girlfriend, and never thinking that 25 years later, that hanging around in the Hindu Kush in Afghanistan smoking dope was going to translate into me going back, balding, with 3 kids, married, on horseback, looking for a 6'5" Saudi guy. because going back to what we are saying before, the agency's like, well, we need someone who knows how to, we need someone who knows how to like navigate up in the mountains of the Hindu Kush. Oh, Jerry did back when he was a hippie. And I was in India as a hippie. I studied at I was a disciple at the Sikh Golden Temple. The agency said, hey, we want you to go back to India to work there undercover. And um, I lived in Israel, worked on a kibbutz. I lived in Mexico. I hitchhiked through Africa. The agency sent me back to Africa. So I went to all these things, and I finally went back to grad school in the States. And I got a letter in the mail, and it was from the agency. And they basically said, no joke, we want to talk to you. And I think it was a professor narked on me. And I went in and talked to him. I said, there's no way they're going to like hire me, right? I mean, I was smoking dope in the Hindu Kush and, living on a kibbutz in India and hippie and they're like, no, we're looking for people who can like live abroad, people who understand foreign cultures, people who are willing to take risks with their life, people who are intellectually curious. And so I'm like, sure, I'm in. Now I want to throw in one more thing into that is while I was doing that, I matured as a human being. I think I matured politically and intellectually. And it was less the sort of the romanticism. I saw some really awful things abroad. I saw people starving in India. I'd gone to East Germany and then Czechoslovakia, which was under Stalinist regimes, and I developed a real visceral loathing of authoritarian regimes, of, you know, a leader telling people what to do, whether that leader was like, Brezhnev or Erich Honecker in East Germany, dictators. I saw in India where they were trying to embrace the Soviet economic model and it was causing death and destruction. I saw corruption and authoritarian regimes in Africa. And I'm like, this sucks. And what we've got in the United States, is something worth defending. And in Europe too. I mean, representative democracy is something I believe very strongly in. And I believe very strongly in the American dream, the myth, right? My grandparents were illiterate immigrants. My grandfather was an illiterate, illegal immigrant from Ireland, jumped ship. And so, this country gave me everything. And I believe in that, the American mythos and representative democracy. And I got to tell you, when I put my hand up, my right hand up, and I swore an oath to defend, the ideals and the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, I had like goose pimples running up. I've never sworn an oath before. And, even when you retire, it doesn't end. So I believe that very strongly. And so, yeah, I'm a believer. I had, a great connection to and, yeah, love for the agency's mission, and also what I saw of our brethren agencies in DEA, in the FBI, and especially in the American military. Guys who were willing to risk their lives. And I'll also say that I have a master's degree in international business management, and I could have gone out and made, triple the money I made. And instead I volunteered later to, I volunteered to risk my wife becoming a widow and my three kids becoming, half orphans by going off and, going after bin Laden and living in under very difficult circumstances in places like Iraq, Anbar province, and in Afghanistan, up in Kunar province and Nuristan, because I really believed in what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so I was happy to do it. So long story, I think I went on too long, but those are the folks we're looking for. And I think those are the things you get. If you're in it for like, chicks, money, and glory, it's the wrong it's the wrong agency for you.
You said that you think your professor snitched you off. Do you think that the CIA actually knew about your background?
No.
No, you just
No,
think.
I knew we had, and where I went to grad school is an international grad school, and I think we had spotters, and there was no pressure. They just said, "Hey, if you're interested, we'd like to talk to you." And I didn't think they'd ever have me, right? And so I was pleased to go to the agency. I felt really privileged to have been asked.
So when you join up with CIA, how old are you?
27 now, 28. Yeah,
Okay, so 27, 28. You go to the referring as the farm, I would assume.
I did. Yeah.
Okay. What do you learn at the farm? Give me a general idea. When I'm at DEA Academy, we go over firearms, we go over constitutional law, drug identification. What do you guys specifically do?
Yeah, you learn how to run and recruit securely spies. That foreign assets, people willing to risk their lives to provide the United States with information that we need to keep our country safe. So you learn there is a that trade. There's not a specific set of tradecraft rules, but you learn scenarios and you learn a way of thinking. How is it that you get someone to do what you want? And by, I don't mean by coercion, I mean they have to voluntarily want to do it, right?
Hmm.
And get someone to risk their lives to do that. And we can't make people do it, but we find ways that you know put them at ease enough to want them to do it. And so, yeah, so we go through a pretty rigorous training thing, but it is less involved with guns and we do a fair amount of that, but we don't really, except in war zones, we don't really use weapons all that often. Like, in fact, we never carry unless we're in a war zone or under very special circumstances. And they mostly treat us to respect firearms and to understand like what they do.
Hmm.
Not because like you don't want to do any of the shit you see in the movie, like just quick knock it out of their hands, or hide behind a car when they're shooting at you because the bullet won't go through, won't go through the door of a car, So we go through some pretty basic stuff. I can't say where the farm is. You can probably look it up online; it'll tell you. But yeah, it's pretty rigorous training, and it's the better part of a year. You disappear.
Oh, it's a full year.
Oh yeah, it depends. Well, it depends when. It depends, different times. It depends what you're going through.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, people looking to go to Moscow would be trained differently than people likely going off to other places. Right?
Okay, so that's a question then. So you're going through the farm. Is it at that time where you kind of make a, I don't know, for lack of a better term, decision, or did they decide for you, I am going to go, you're going to go to
Yeah,
Moscow, or you're going to go to
it
where?
changes. It changes as time goes on, and this is probably a little aged, but basically it was almost like the NFL where you pick teams and you're at the farm for a bunch of months, and then there's an evening where like it used to be where division chiefs would come out, like the head of Africa division would bring some people, and they wouldn't set up a booth, but they're like, hey, you should come to Africa division, and like the Near East division would like, hey, you should come to the Near East division. We'll teach you Arabic. It'll be great.
Yeah.
And so you sort of talk to them. For a lot of people, it's sort of pretty much understood. I mean, I speak German. I lived in Germany. It was pretty clear where I was going to go. I was going to go to Europe.
Okay.
That's where I wanted to go.
Okay.
And so that the fit was good there. If you speak Arabic or you speak Russian, that's already, that's very likely where you're going to go anyway. But so yeah, so there's a little bit of the divisions will compete for the right people, for the people they want, and people will try to go into certain divisions. And by and large, it's all sort of people understand how it's going to work anyway, right? But not always.
Kind of getting back to what you were talking about, the movies and the realistic,
Yeah.
Stuff. Because as you're telling me kind of how the farm is written, I run, I'm thinking about these movies going, yeah, you're doing hand-to-hand combat and you're learning all this. So it's okay.
No. We're learning. So we're learning how to avoid
Right.
hand-to-hand combat. We're learning, it's like, yeah, don't ever get in a fight, right? Just like run away. So in fact, one of the things that we've been taught. I remember there was one particular exercise we had. So we had these paintball guns, and they're like flintlocks, right? You fire one, you could just sort of see it after 70 meters sort of trail off. And they've been teaching us how to deal with ambushes and all these things, and in war zone situations. And we were like, okay, we got these things, and we're driving from one location to another location, and we're going on this dirt road. And what they teach, things they teach is get off the X, right? Survive. That's what you got to do. And unlike the military. And, so we're driving along this bus on this dirt road, and it's in the farm. And all of a sudden, this explosion goes up in front of this little minibus that we're in. And all of a sudden, and there's no windows in this bus, by the way. They put us there for a reason. And all of a sudden, from this rise to the left, comes this incoming fire of paintballs. But they don't have, I'm sorry, they don't have fucking flintlocks. They've got like AK versions, right? And they're much more powerful. And they're hitting the side of the bus, and we all like, incoming left. Okay, now we get off the bus. They didn't shoot us yet. And so he's like, okay, now we got two choices. We can stand and fight, and there's no right answer. We can stand and fight, or we can run. And off to the right is sort of this downslope with a bunch of trees in it. And like, I'm an ex-hippie, like I know what I'm gonna do, right? I'm in good shape, right? It's like, I got sneakers on, right? So, and I know from training that, even with a pistol, every 10 steps, you get further away from a guy with a pistol, especially if he's nervous or been drinking, his likelihood of hitting you is like way less. And so I take off, and we had a couple of guys who were ex-military, and they're like, fuck this, man. And they were all murdered. They were all paintballed up. And those of us who ran, a couple of the slower ones got shot in the back or the ass, right? So we took 30% casualties. Those guys that decided to stand took 100% casualties. And then they took us back in and go, what'd you guys learn? And the answer wasn't, as it is with all things with espionage, the answer wasn't, you guys who stood and fought were wrong. It's like, you need to think about this. Like, you need to think about the odds, you need to think about the stakes. You need to think about, like, okay, it's not a pass fail, right? It's like, there's here you go. This is what it looks like. And when I was in Afghanistan, we were involved, and there's a couple of incidents that I won't go into where things got pretty hairy. And I thought, I'm glad I took that. It's like, it's going to help me remember and think about what it is I want to do. This isn't exactly the same thing. I'm operating with Navy SEALs, and there's no paintball guns, right? But okay.
Yeah.
I understand the concept of getting off the X. Whether I choose to use it or not is something else. So yeah, so the farm gets you to think and puts you into the mindset more than anything else. And it weeds out those who don't. People down the farm, it's like people who apply, it's maybe 1 in 100,000. It's like tougher to get in the farm to get into Harvard, because we're looking for a very specific set of people. And then we wash out a lot of people. There are a lot of people who simply can't do it, right? And it's good to know up front.
What's your attrition rate, you think, at the farm?
20, 30%.
And why do people fail out?
Mostly because they're looking for the answer. A lot of military people fail out. I'll be straight with you. Because what does the book say? There is no fucking book, dude.
Right.
If you can't come up with like, I did this and here's why, and make a case for it to your instructor. If you say, well, that's what the book said, it's like, fuck the book, man. There is no book, right? I mean, we have a book, but it's like, and it gets back to those movies, right? So there's the famous thing that the Israelis supposedly did, and I think it was in one of the movies, it may have been Sneakers, where what they're looking for is they take you down to on a street corner, and they say, okay, 30 minutes, I want you standing on that balcony drinking a glass of water. Like, how do I do that? Like, that's for you to figure out. And you got 30 minutes to do it. Go. And then they just stand there. Can you show up on the balcony drinking a glass of water? So you knock on the door. There's an old lady. You got to have a story. She's got to let you in. You got to have a reason to go there. You can't just go there. You got to have a glass of water, right? And so, I'm shooting, I'm getting married in the square. I'm going to shoot it. I was wondering if I could do this, or whatever. Oh, man. Or, hey, I'm, CIA has done this. I'll give you $100 if you let me stand. There's no answer, right?
Yeah.
The answer is, can you do it? And so yeah, that's we have similar things where you need to do this kind of thing. So I'll give you one. We tell stories.
Yeah.
Sort of things that the agency doesn't teach. So this is in Afghanistan, and this is in early 2003, and we're way up north in Kunar province. And we think at the time that we have some fairly good information that bin Laden may be in the area. Certainly that Hekmatyar, senior, who's an affiliate of bin Laden, and was certainly in the area. So we couldn't just leave. And on either side, we've got mountains, 7,000 feet, 17,000 feet tall with snow on the top. And there is one narrow dirt road that goes north and south on this road. And we were the tip of the spear. We were at the very front, and we stopped and we established a camp for a while, and we were running out of gas and we were running out of food. And the military said, well, we'll come up. And they came out of Asadabad. And they drove up in a convoy and they dropped off, pogey bait and food, and we had more gas. And as they went back, they hit an IED. And, one particular vehicle went over, a guy I was talking to an hour before lost, his leg he's lost his leg. Nobody was killed in this. And then the next day, some Afghans come in, and they've got an IED, and they say, hey, we dug this up to the road to the north of you. So we've got IEDs to the north, and we've got an IED to the south. We're being bracketed by these command detonated IEDs. And it's like, so there's a bomb maker out there. Who is he, and how do we stop him? We can't leave, but I don't want to drive over one of these things, right? And it gets complicated, and I won't go into the back and forth of it, but we figured out who the bomb maker was through people telling us, right? We had informants. So we knew his name, but of course, what do you need? You need to know, you need to be able to place him in time and space. Like at this time, at that 10-digit grid code, then you can affect his capture possibly, right? Name doesn't help too much. And so it's 10 o'clock at night. We're sitting around a campfire. We're in this hooch that looks sort of like the Alamo, one of these Afghan fortresses that we'd rented. It's called. And one of the guards comes in. He says, "Hey, I'm running this clown show, and there's a few agency officers, some special forces guys, and it's on an intelligence gathering mission, and I'm in charge because I've got 500 grand in a bag, right? Just like and they're only our special forces guys are great, but their job is to get involved if it's kinetic, but only if it's kinetic, because we're not there to do shooting. We're there to collect intelligence, but it's in a dangerous place. So we depend on them if things go bad. The agency guys, you don't want us with guns, right? I mean, we carry them, they look good on us, but if things go bad, our job is to cower behind a wall and let the pros do the job. And when it comes down to drinking tea with the graybeards and, looking for information, that's our job. So this guy comes in, and it's 10 o'clock at night, and he sits down, we search him, he sits down, and he's wearing a pakul, and he's got a gray beard, and he's hunched on the ground, and we're all drinking tea, and he says, I'll make it short, he says, I know who the bomb maker is, and I can give him to you. I can place him in time and space for you tomorrow. I'm like, great. All right. And he gave us his name. He gave us background information that we already knew. So it was like, okay, this guy, he's not making this up. So then the question, of course, is, well, what do you want for this information? And because he's not our friend, right? This guy just wandered in. He's an Afghan tribesman. And he says, yeah, there is something you want. He says, do you want money? Do you want a visa? Do you want cows? Do you want guns? What do you want? And he says, I don't want anything tangible. What I want from you is I want your word. I want you to swear on the eyes of your children that if you find this guy, that you'll kill him, that you won't take him alive. I want him dead. Like, interesting. Why? Of course, the next question. Because he's my son-in-law. Like, okay, explain. And he says, well, he's my son-in-law, but he comes from a strong clan. I'm from a weak clan, so I can't kill him. And basically, he's married to my daughter only because he basically caught her out. She's a beautiful young woman. He caught her out while she was herding our flock, and he raped her. And then he told everyone that she was no longer marriageable because she's no longer a virgin. He says, came to me and said, old man, you didn't protect your daughter, but I'm willing to marry her, but no bride price. I'm not paying you for her. She's damaged goods. And he says, this is our culture. You know, it's like she needs a male to protect her. And they're a wealthy clan. What could I do? Right. And so I said, okay. He says, he's not Al Qaeda. He's an electrical engineer, studied in Pakistan. That's how he can make the bombs so well, these IEDs. And he said, he's beating the shit out of my daughter. He says, but she's not pregnant yet. And if he dies as a widow, she can remarry whoever she wants, and she gets part of his, as a widow, she keeps part of his wealth. And she can come back home and live a good life and find somebody. And he's telling her that he's thinking of basically doing the same thing to her sister, taking her as a second wife, basically catching her and raping her and marrying her. And he says, I want him dead. He says, but I can't do it because that'll create a blood feud. But if you do. So now you're sitting there and thinking, well, I don't remember this scenario with the farm, right? It's like, okay, where's the book where I open this up, right? And he's saying like, this is that by now it's, 11:30 in the evening, it's time to go. And he's like, yes or no. So there's no like, let me get a rabbi, let me talk to a priest, let me talk to a lawyer. It's like, yes or no, dude, because I'm leaving, right? So, let me ask you, we're having this conversation, or at least I'm doing most of the talking. So now what would you do?
I'd kill him. If the guy, well, let me ask you this. If
People in the audience should think what they should do, but go ahead.
If the guy is,
it's a true story.
Okay, true story. He's setting up bombs. Are they specifically to kill Americans?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm killing him.
Well, okay, I'll play the devil's advocate.
Okay.
How do you know this guy's telling you the truth? What have you done to vet what he has to say, other than like he knows the name? This guy is asking you to be his contract killer. He's asking you to murder somebody. And what's more, under the, for the military folks out there, under our rules of engagement, if that guy puts his hands up in the air, right, it's against the law to kill him. It's a war crime. He's asking to commit a war crime. So, but also think about this. If you take him prisoner, he's the bomb maker is gonna sit in jail and go, how did they know where my father-in-law knew where I was, right? So I'm gonna fucking kill my father-in-law. I'm gonna torture him to death. I'm gonna shoot. So this is not a win-win. This is a lose-lose. Right?
I think the one thing that as you're talking that got me thinking about this, my initial visceral reaction is I'm gonna kill him. But the one thing that getting back to my law enforcement experience, what I'm thinking about is, you're right. How do you know the story's true? How do you verify the story? And I don't know if you can, right?
You can partially verify it.
Right.
But on the other hand, you don't want to die. And you don't want your friends to die.
Right.
Right? And I'll tell you what, my spider sense told me he's telling the truth. I couldn't prove it, but yeah, he's telling the truth.
Yeah.
Or at least mostly true. So I'll tell you what I did.
Yeah.
I lied to him. I looked that old man right in the eye. I put my hand on my heart and I swore up and down that I would kill him. And then I talked to the SEAL team guys. They're like, I don't care what you swore. If he puts his hands in the air, we can't shoot him. I'm like, I know. Something I have to live with. So yeah. So, okay. So, so as a SEAL officer, did I manipulate him? Did he manipulate me? Did I lie? Did I lie was it a white lie, a black lie? So I'll wrap it up. And yeah, we captured the guy. It was true. Everything he said.
Wow.
And he was where he said. And not only that, just to tell you how cool we CIA guys are, it was this hut built into the side of a hill. So half of it was in this sort of rock, it had been chiseled out of this hill. And so they kicked the door in. Guy was there. They took him out. It was him, and he had his little bomb factory in there. And they look around and they're like, okay. And I'm hiding behind a wall, right? This is my it's like, I am literally, right? I'm a terrible shot. And so I'm hiding behind a wall, and it's like, okay. And so, I'm there. And so I walk into the hut, and there was on the far wall was this blanket for half the wall, and it was carved into the thing. And I pulled the blanket apart, and there was a crawl space in there, and I could see there was stuff in there. And I went to stick my hand in, and the next thing I know, one of the SEALs takes his rifle, and he like whacks my arm down and says, "Don't you fucking put your hand in there." It's like, we haven't cleared that space yet. And he's like, "There could be an ID. You could stick your hand in there and kill us all." I'm like, "Oh, fuck." He says, "Never stick an appendage into anything unless you know where it's been." And it's like, yeah, okay, I get the double entendre here, but like, and so, then they took a flashlight and they looked in there and he had all his bomb making material in there for his IEDs. And no, he didn't have a booby trap, but he could have.
Yeah.
Right. And it's realized, okay, so I'm an intelligence officer, but I'm in their, the special forces, I'm in their world, doing my thing in their world. And so what I came away with that from was that things work really well when we work together. And, you can quote Goethe or Schopenhauer, but I like to quote Ghostbusters. It's like, never cross your streams, right? It's like, bad things will happen. So stay in your lane. The lanes can be really close together, but use your expertise for what you're good at and let them use their expertise for what they're good at. And I think the same goes, and for this podcast, the same goes too for law enforcement. The agency, we're good at some things and we're not good at others because that's not our mission. It's not what we work at. And in fact, I think we'd be lousy DEA officers because, rules of evidence and chain of custody things aren't really what we do. Right? So, because we're looking for foreign intelligence, and there was no, I couldn't convict the guy in a court of law, right? It's like, I had to bring the old man in front of the judge and go, "This is what he said. This is why." It's like, it wouldn't work.
Right.
But this isn't a court of law. The bombs were there. He was there. We took him off to, Policharki in Afghanistan, in prison there. So I had no idea what happened to him afterwards.
What's any blowback on the father-in-law at all?
You know what? No fucking idea.
Yeah.
That's one of the other things is, like, movies, they always have like it's like, here's what happened afterwards. Like,
right.
I have no idea. So I'm telling the story, and this also tells you, or gives you a sense of the moral quandaries involved. Did I do the right thing? To this day, I still don't know. Right? And the fact that I can even think of the story and tell you the story tells me that I'm not comfortable or happy with the outcome. I don't know if I did the right thing. I'll never know. There may not be a right answer. There was just the best answer I had with the information I had at the time, with the mission I needed to carry out, right? And so, and you do the best you can with what you got. And often that's incomplete. And so that maybe so that's one of the exhilarating and at the same time awful things about being an intelligence officer, certainly CIA doing that kind of thing. But you want people who are comfortable with ambiguity doing that kind of thing, and people who understand why, hopefully it's for a greater good, not for, for anything nefarious. And you don't want somebody who's too happy and confident afterwards, right? Because you may not have made the right decision. You need to think about it, tell that story, and have somebody else think about it. And right, so we're never really sure.
It's an amazing story. I'm still mulling it over in my head as you're telling the story. It's just like,
welcome to the world of the agency, right? And to be clear, that's like, doesn't happen all the time. Right?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So the farm doesn't teach that kind of stuff. But it teaches how to think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Before we started, we talked a little bit about this, but give the audience a sense of how is the agency broken down? Do you have different divisions? How do
you have different directorates?
Okay.
I think there's 5 basic ones. I think there's like 5 tribes, and we all work together. So there's the clandestine service, also known as the Directorate of Operations. These are the folks like myself who do, we recruit and securely run human intelligence sources. And so we're the classic spies. We're the bonds. We're the most charming, best looking, most humble, obviously. And then we have the folks who do analysis, who provide the president with, take all the intelligence from human to SIGINT and all the rest and put it together into intelligence products and do a lot of other things. So there's the analysts, they're the smart guys. And then there's the S&T, science and technology, the world of Q from James Bond, that do all the gizmos. and then are the folks who do supporting logistics, who are the unsung real friggin' heroes of the agency, right? Can make anything happen anywhere at any time if you let them. All right, and I think increasingly we're the fifth tribe now is cyber and that world as well. So we all work together. We're all different, and just like with our military or law enforcement brethren, things work best when we work together.
I love gadgets. So you're talking about Q. Would I be blown away with the stuff that you guys have?
Yeah, the stuff that might blow you away, I'll never talk about. But yeah, I mean, most of it is more basic than you think. But yeah, if you need to get something done, we've got guys who can figure out how to make something happen, how to hide something, how to exfil somebody. Sure.
Technologically wise, though, does it filter down eventually? Like you guys create something super cool. Does it eventually get to military public domain?
Yeah.
Okay.
By and large. Yeah. So yes. And I'll say this about these unsung heroes and the S&T side, and especially in the cyber side and the logistics side, the support side. These are guys who could make quadruple what they could on the outside, and they really serve. And they do these great things for way less. So for all the folks out there with deep state conspiracies, these are guys taking, who would do things that you probably wouldn't do. They're taking, pay cuts of 75% because they believe in the Constitution, representative democracy, and doing the right thing. And, they're not these, and they're doing this not for like power. Nobody knows who they are. And unlike the rest of the world inside of the agency, what we earn is no secret to anybody. We're on the GS scale. You're a GS 14. Everybody knows what you make, right? You can like friggin' just look it up online.
Yeah.
So it's not a money thing. It's not a power thing. It's really, people who are trying to do the right thing. And I think sometimes we have difficulty, keeping folks because like, look, I got kids to feed. I got college kids, and so yeah, so we have some really magnificent people who do some really, really cool stuff.
Nerdy question for you. You're talking about the GS scale. How does it work for the CIA? Like for DEA, it was GS 13. Here's your base pay plus, I don't know, I think you got 25% of your AUO, uncontrollable overtime. How did it work for you guys?
It depends. It depends where you are, and we've changed over time.
Okay.
So if you're 15 or below, you can get overtime, but it's pretty strictly. It's like it's not like just like, oh, I think I'll throw in some overtime, right?
Yeah.
You don't do that.
Yeah.
If you're in war zones, they're more liberal with like what you can claim for overtime. Like I was out in a gunfight. It's like, oh well, okay, I've got overtime for that. And then when you hit the so 13, 14. 15, which is where most of our folks are.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you hit SIS, the general ranks, you can't get overtime anymore. So you actually make less money. So the higher up you get, the less money you make. But hey, man, it's a golden key to an empty room. But yeah, let's go back to the deep state conspiracy. So the higher up you get, the less money you make.
Golden key to an empty room. That is great. I've never heard that one. That is awesome.
Yeah. So I liked being with people who were doing something because of what they believed in.
Right.
And that goes for like special forces guys who could make more money elsewhere, and law enforcement officers who could make more money elsewhere. And they're doing it because they want to protect their families and protect our way of life. And those are really unsung heroes. And we all abide by the rules that called law and order.
Yeah.
Our laws.
What's the overall goal of the agency? What do you think their mission is?
Well, so so if you're talking about, so CIA, we are the our center is human source collection, right? So NSA does more of the earphone stuff.
Yeah.
But so two things I'll say in that. Maybe I'll miscount three. So our focus is on human intelligence, and that's collecting plans and intentions of our adversaries. And that's important to say, plans and intentions. So intentions, Vladimir Putin, this is what he intends to do. He hasn't written it down anywhere, but this is what he's told a few guys, right? We need to know that, right? And so that's, we have to get a human being in there to do this. And we have to convince someone that it's in their interest to do it and that they're willing to risk their life and their families' lives to do this. I can talk about why people do that. And these guys are the real heroes. By and large, when we're living abroad, we have diplomatic immunity. If we get caught, they may beat the shit out of us, but then we get sent home the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Our asset is executed,
Right.
often. So we collect. So the first thing is we collect foreign intelligence. So the agency's mission is to provide intelligence to the policymakers so they can make the best calls. Now, if we provide them really good intelligence and they make a bad call, that's one of the warts of democracy, right? We don't tell policymakers what to do, but we collect. So we collect it. We also do covert action, things that the United States government needs done that it doesn't want people to know about, that are deniable. And I think there's a lot of conspiracy comes out of that, but it's less, it's more cut and dry than you might think. So we collect intelligence, collect and provide intelligence. We recruit sources, and covert action. Those are the things that we do.
Does it essentially come down to the protection of the United States, though? The motives?
It's all comes down to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's defending the constitutional order.
Right.
Right.
What you touched on this. What would be some of the motives of human assets that are cooperating with you, knowing that if you get caught, you're going to get killed?
So we're looking for, unlike law enforcement, generally.
Yeah.
We're not looking for snitches or informants. We're looking to recruit somebody and run them for the next 25 years inside an organization. So for us, our alpha and omega is to recruit and protect sources so that they can provide us with intelligence to protect our country and our people. So we don't burn them in court. And to do this, I got to make this very clear, we don't engage in blackmail, because if you blackmail a source into working for you, yeah, maybe he'll get you a piece of paper, but he's going to, can you really trust him if he's not really voluntarily doing this? Do you really want that guy standing behind you with looking to put a shiv into your ribs whenever he can, right, to get out of this? We're looking for people who want to do this. And let me give you an example, because it's sort of easy to wrap your mind around it.
Mm-hmm.
I meet a guy from a radical Islamic regime whose their whole raison d'etre is to kill Americans, kill Jews, kill Israelis, destroy Israel, destroy the United States. This is what this country, there's a number of them, but he's one of them. You can imagine his country was all about radical theology and anti-Americanism and against the West, what we stand for. And we meet at number of diplomatic functions, because we all get invited to the same, the country we're in, we all got invited to the same diplomatic functions. And he speaks German and so do I, so we're able to talk without other people understanding. And there's this sparkle is in his eye, and as he calls me a terrible infidel going to hell, but he's just sort of smiling about it. And it was sort of I don't know. I mean, I've been married for 40 years, but 39 years, but back when I was dating, you'd sort of meet somebody and you just sort of sense there's a thing, a vibe, right? And so eventually I get him out to lunch, and I engineered it, and we bumped into each other when there was nobody around, but the bump was not accidental. Again, this was a small conspiracy. I knew where he was going to be at a certain time, and oh, fancy that you're here. Let's have lunch. No one's going to see we're having lunch. He's like, okay. So we sit down, and I decide I'm going to fuck with him. And waiter comes over, and I said, I'll have a beer and a bacon sandwich, right? How do you like them apples? And he just sort of smiles, and it's turned to order, and he says, I'll have the same. Whoa. So he says, Jerry, things aren't always as they seem. So moving forward, weeks later, he and I are driving, and it's 2:00 in the morning, and we're driving through this sort of wilderness road, and we're having a really deep conversation. And he says, basically there is something in his soul that he can't tell anybody about. Anybody. And it is just eating at him like a cancer. And in his society, he's not even allowed to have these treasonous thoughts. And he turns to me and he says, do you think there's a God? And this is like, I'm not trying to fuck with a guy. I'm like, you know what? I really don't think there's a God, but I'm not sure, right? I mean, I'm not buying the straight Christian thing, right? And but I studied Sikhism and Hinduism, and I'd studied Islam, and I'm not sure I buy any of them. And he says, I've given this a lot of thought. I don't think there is one. And so you have to imagine this guy gets up every morning at 4 a.m. and kneels next to his wife, whom he loves with his whole heart, and they pray. And he looks at her and he thinks, is she faking it just like I am? And he says, but if I share this with her, that makes me a traitor to my government. This makes me go like I'm going to hell. Does she report me? Does this destroy my marriage? I can't tell her. Then he goes to work, and they all line up at work in the embassy and they pray. And he's got really good friends, and he looks at them and go, are they fucking faking it too? Right? And he can't tell anybody. And he is desperate. And he finally says, you know what? I love my country. I hate my government. It's like what we do is, we kill people, we hurt people, we're racist, we are, we are intolerant. He says, I actually like what you've got. I would like to see us be a representative democracy. I would like to be able to vote. I would like to be able to say what I think without having to worry about that I'm committing treason or I'm going to hell or I'm going to jail or that they're going to go after my family. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do about it? And he says, well, what are my options? Okay, let's talk. Now we have an asset who is willing to work with us for the next 20 years. And his loyalty is to his country, but not to his government. And keeping this guy alive, I would have sacrificed my life to keep him alive, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing. So, did I manipulate him? Did he manipulate me? Back to the farm and how do you do this? But, you radically tell the truth with some things like this. It's like, I'm not trying to do cheap manipulation. I want these people, when we get to have these sort of real recruitments, they know us. They, because they're trusting their life to us. And when I look at him, which I did, and looked him straight in the eye and said, I can keep you alive. You better not be fucking around. You better really believe that in your heart that you can do that. And that's where your training comes in, right? And it's like, if I'm being tortured, if somebody's putting a gun to my kid's head, I'm not going to sell him and his family out, right? And so we have these really deep connections to our assets, to our agents, and they do to us and to what, hopefully to the agency. And that guy was, I'll go so far to say is he was like, I'm in, right? I want to do this, and I want to do this for my reasons.
Do most of your assets have that kind of altruistic?
No, we have mercenaries and holders.
Yeah, you get money and
sure. We don't generally want those kind of agents.
Yeah, but how about getting to the U.S.? Some people want to get to the U.S. Is that a motivation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some people do. I had another guy from a radical Arab country. And, this is unlike in the movies, we met on a putt-putt golf course. And we're the only two guys on there. It was the middle of the afternoon. Of course, off to the side, I did have somebody with a weapon with a bullseye on his head in case he pulled a gun, right? Because it's the first time I'm meeting him. And because his country kills and kidnaps Americans, right? So, but I was pretty sure he didn't want to, but not 100% sure. And so we stood at a putt-putt golf course, and he said, I want to come to the United States. And I said, okay, well, what are you willing to do in return? He said, I'm willing to spy. I'm willing to turn against my government. And then he explained he has 3 daughters. I'm sure he has 3. He has daughters. One of his daughters was brilliant. And he said, I don't want my daughter growing up in in the. I don't want my daughter growing up in this society that I helped create.
Wow.
And then he said, I know your agency. And he says, I know you know all about me. And I'm like, yeah, we know. We've done our traces. We didn't know anything about it. And he says, yeah, I know you know that like I've committed human rights violations, that I've tortured people and executed people. I'm like, yeah, we know that, but that's why I'm here. I'm just gonna talk about it. We don't want fucking any of this, right? And he's like, yeah, and I also like I was involved in mock executions of Americans. We line up against a wall, and he says, but we were all drunk, and it was like, we shouldn't have drank it, but it was kind of fun, and like I was younger in those days. Like, yeah, no, we didn't shoot him, so it's good. And we're done, and I came back and I reported it all, and they said, tell him to take a long walk on a short pier. We don't want him.
Really?
Yep. I was like, no, we should like use him, but then not let him come to the United States. Just give him some money or something like that because he can help. They're like, nope. We talked to the lawyers. We don't want that kind of guy on our payroll, right? I mean, I said,
Wow.
give him some money, let him go to like Germany or
Yeah.
someplace, and they're like, nope. So yeah, we are lawyered to the get go in the agency.
Wow.
So I'm not sure that was the right answer either, but
Yeah.
I mean, he could have given us information that saved an American life, right? We'll never know because we never recruited him. So, but these are again, going back to ambiguity, we're in these really gray zones where the most of the real world operates, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I've got maybe some fast answering questions for you, but let me
lightning round.
This
yes. No.
This may not be it. This may be a lightning round. But I asked you this beforehand. I just kind of want the audience to know. So when I was with DEA, when we would switch administrations and we would get new DEA administrators, we for sure had a shift in priority. We're going to do this. Nope, we're no longer going to do this. We're going to focus on this. Does it work the same way at the CIA? Or are you guys pretty?
No, it doesn't. I mean, our priorities are always pretty much the same thing. Terrorism, North Korea, Iran, Gaddafi's gone, he's not living anymore, Iraq. So we've got pretty much, and of course Russia, right? So we have pretty much the standard set of characters, regardless of Republican or Democrat.
Okay. Okay. Havana syndrome. Is it?
Oh, and politically, there's up until now.
Okay.
There's never been I've never seen from anybody any political push to do or not do something.
Okay.
I mean, the Congress can do that by our budget.
Okay.
Like, we're cutting your counterterrorism budget. Okay, we're going to do less against. Oh, in China, of course, China. We're increasing your budget against China. Oh, okay, then we'll do more against China, right? So that's how generally it's done. It's and we have the oversight committees that know everything we do. We have no secrets from the oversight committee, so they know everything. And there's two committees in the Senate and two committees in the House, and they are bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats, and because they control our purse, there are zero secrets for them. They see everything. So next time you see like, oh, the Republicans are shocked, or oh, the Democrats are shocked about what the agency was doing, they already fucking knew about it from beforehand, and we had to get their permission to spend money on it. So we are, part of our job in the agency is to be the whipping boy, right? It's like, oh, the agency fucked it up. Well, we were ordered to do it, right? And maybe we failed, but we didn't because back to like, we don't know how to do this shit, right?
Right.
It's like, go figure it out,
right?
And when you're operating in the gray, you're not always going to get it right. You're just because you're human beings, right? So longer answer to what should have been a short question, but yeah.
Okay, which actually leads me into another answer before I go on the lightning round with you. But tell me how it breaks down, if you know, CIA in general. So we talked about this before. State Department are known as a little bit more touchy-feely. DEA are known as the knuckle draggers. Where does CIA fall in there?
We really don't, because people don't really know what we do. We're supposed to... we're sort of lone wolves, unlike the military. So when we do our recruiting, we do it alone. When we go to Afghanistan, we don't go like 20 of us at one time. We're not in units. We are individuals. So we are more lone wolf than anybody.
I guess what I meant is this. State Department is seen as more touchy-feely. DEA, not so much. Where are you guys?
Yeah, we are we are people who it's mostly on the spy side. We're activists, right? We don't like to turn the other cheek. We are very intolerant of intolerance,
Okay.
right? So yeah, we're like State Department. I think we're probably touchy feely because we have to be, right? We're
Mhm.
dealing with people and
Yep.
cultures and
Yep.
trying to understand them, but we're also like the military, like we don't fuck around either, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, read the press. I'm not gonna say we do it, but we kill people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Al Qaeda, Al
Right.
Qaeda and things like that. We don't commit assassinations. That's not allowed. But it's a whole other kettle of fish. But we are very activist, and especially in places like war zones, right, to defend the American people.
Right.
We take that very serious. So yeah, we're a little bit of both.
Okay.
But I think most agency officers, though, are radically in the middle. That we don't, we deal with governments on the right and left, authoritarian, like communist governments like North Korea, far leftist governments like in Venezuela. We despise and loathe both of those. And then we also believe in the rule of law because we live in places like Africa or Zimbabwe or Pakistan where there is no rule of law. So we really strongly believe in obeying US law, which is kind of weird. I need to touch on this. Law enforcement, I said that law enforcement, you guys are cops and we are robbers. We steal things, right? We steal secrets. And
Yeah.
so we arguably, we are the most law abiding of people. We are fucking Boy Scouts, except with other people's laws, right? It's like, I break North Korean law all the time, right? It's like, I don't care about North Korean law. I
Yeah.
don't care about Russian law, right? Because it's against the law to commit espionage in Russia. But if I can, I will, right? But all spies did the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So because it's against the law to run espionage inside the United States, and oh gosh, look, India is doing it, and possibly even our British friends, but there's different kinds, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we don't really fit in easily anywhere into the U.S. government, but the U.S. government, I know a lot of people don't like to believe this, but we are pretty friggin' transparent from, like how much money do you make or,
Yeah.
What our laws are,
Yeah.
right? That's all pretty transparent stuff. And go to try to take something to court, right? It's all out in the open. And we have juries. And the CIA, we're a secretive organization. We don't fit in easily, nor should we in an open democracy. We shouldn't fit in easily into that structure. The KGB, which is SVR, fits in very easily to Russia because they don't have rule of law. It's authoritarian. They can just, they can kill journalists. There's no independent court system. There's no laws really. It's just whatever Putin says, right?
Mhm.
I mean, they have laws, but like they're only enforced if they want to enforce them, or you can buy a judge. And we don't really have that.
Yeah.
It's not like a policeman. You can slip them $20 like in Mexico and say, "Hey, go away."
Right.
We don't have that in the United States, but other places we do.
Yeah.
So yeah. So in the middle, someplace.
Okay. Havana syndrome, real or fake?
It's a real thing.
Yeah. I don't.
Can't prove it, but I believe it. Yeah.
To me, Jerry, I listen to these stories. It seems to me 100% real. Why would you make it up? You're having real effects on your body, and yet I hear, and I can't remember who the last person was, but it's maybe a congressman or senator, and we don't believe this. It's just like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. So there's it's the more you get into it, the easier it is to believe it.
Yeah.
So real quick, there's a group of, I don't know, 20, 25 people who are people who focused on Russian operations. And those are the ones that have been clobbered by this.
Yeah.
And you can see they're not going to make it up. And, they've been at places like Johns Hopkins, and they do have lacerations in their brain, right? And of course, they didn't have these tests before they went in, so there's no definitive way of saying that, like, well, you've always had these, right? But they all have it, and so that's an anomaly. The agency, at least for its part, then went out and said to the entire workforce, "Do you have headaches? Are you tired? Might you have it?" And I think they had 1,000 people come in and go, "Well, maybe." Well, I don't think any or almost any of those people have it, right? I mean, they're like, I don't know. So they say, well, oh, now look, there's, it's 1,200 people who are claiming to have it.
Right.
1,200 people are not claiming to have it. They put out a note to the entire workforce and described the symptoms. And not surprisingly, a bunch of people come in and said, I have some of those symptoms. They're not claiming they have, they're just like, I don't know, I'm just answering honestly, right? I mean,
Right.
in any population, you're going to have people who are feeling that way or think they do or whatever. And so, but that core group of people, Mark Palomaropoulos is a guy I know pretty well. And, and he's one of the first people that got hit with it in Moscow. So yeah, for me, it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. I'm pretty sure it's a duck, but tastes great with plum sauce. The problem though is if you go to the president of the United States and say, yeah, we're like 97% sure. If it's Russia, which I think it is, element of the GRU, that we have to be 100% because we are accusing them of an act of war.
Right.
Are we willing to go to war over this? What are we going to, and then what are we going to do in return? Are we going to start killing their guys?
Yeah.
They're diplomats that are covered under the, we all have diplomatic immunity, which means we have protections under the Vienna Convention. And they would be breaking that if they're doing it. So do we break the Vienna Convention, which allows them to say, oh, you did it first? So it's a pretty friggin' serious thing. And I think we don't have 100% certainty. So for me, 97% is pretty friggin' sure.
Yeah.
But it's not 100%.
Okay, let me give you a hypothetical then. Let's say you guys are in the field and you catch one of these guys pointing one of these sonic.
Sure.
What happens? How serious is it at that point?
Then it's serious as well. Depends who's in the White House. Are they willing to? Is somebody willing to go toe to toe with Putin, or are they going to write him a love letter? I don't know. So it depends on the president. That's a policy issue, right? So I think how it will eventually come out, it'll be one of two ways. Putin will be overthrown, or he'll slip on a banana peel, and the next group will come in, and people, because their system isn't like ours. People will be like, there'll be people up, people down, people being executed, people being, and somebody's going to go, I'm fucking getting out of here, and that one fine day somebody walk into the embassy in Helsinki and go, you take me and my family to the States and hide me, and I'll solve that problem for you. Right? Here you go. This is how we do it. Here's who did it. Here's how they did it. Here's, and then that is generally how it works. And I think that's going to happen one fine day.
Interesting.
What happens then becomes policy.
Right. Israeli operation with the radios and the beepers. We talked about this. It, to me, seems pretty sophisticated. I think you said it is sophisticated, but those things, kind of explain that to me.
That mechanism, yeah, sort of. That mechanism has been around for a long time. This is yeah. So it's a mechanism whereby you get into the supply chain. It's a supply chain operation, and so the principles of that have been around for a long time. For the Israelis, it was like, okay, so we too could have figured out how they're buying pagers, right? We would like, that would be information we would like to have. If we had a source inside of a human source inside of Hezbollah, and they said, yeah, we're going to buy all these pagers, we would write we'd write something up, we'd send it in, and we're like, oh, okay, so that's how they're supplying themselves. The Israelis took that one step further, and they're like, okay, how do we turn these things into bombs? I think we could have had that idea, but our lawyers would never have allowed us to do that outside of wartime. So, it was an amazingly efficient organization that the Israelis could keep it secret. And that they could have it. And I think they may have, I don't know this, but I think in a lot of ways they may have done it, have created the situation by putting out information that cell phones are no good. You got to go over to pagers. Oh, and then you need to have a certain kind of pager with a big battery because, it needs to be rugged. And, and so suddenly they're like, oh, we need one of these things. And then the Israelis, they've got somebody like, oh, here it is.
Yeah.
And it'd have to be pretty quick to be able to make those batteries. Now, everybody thinks this is great. I think it was very effective. it tactically for the Israelis to hurt Hezbollah like that. People may thinking a little bit different if this technology for putting explosives into a battery that no one can see it suddenly means that you can't take your computer or your phone on an airplane ever again, right? I mean, one guy put explosives in a sneaker, and we're all taking our shoes off 20 years later, right?
Right.
So yeah, there going to be there may be some unintended consequences to that. But as a short-term way to really damage Hezbollah, yeah, I think it was a really, really smart, really efficient, effective operation. But Hezbollah's pretty resilient, and they'll figure something else out.
How good are the Mossad? And with that being said, give me, I don't know if you're able to do this. Give me top 3 in the world intelligence agencies.
So it's important to differentiate between like what we do. So I spent 33 years in CIA. CIA, without a doubt, is the top worldwide organization. But you have to underline worldwide. Mossad does one thing only, right? It defends Israel. So if Mossad wants to know what's going on in Africa, it's like, in South Africa or Thai, they have no idea. And they don't care, nor should they care. They only do one thing. They do Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit of Russia, maybe not. I don't really know. But they do terrorism, and their backs are against the wall, so they don't have the same restraints as we do. So I think when it comes down to defending their interests in their neighborhood, they are friggin' good. Anywhere outside of that, it's not what they do.
That's interesting. I didn't even think about that, what you're saying. Yeah.
So if you're meeting with a Mossad guy in Japan, I met with a Mossad guy in Germany, and like, he didn't care about Germany, right? He didn't care about the Russians. He didn't care about the Chinese. What's going on in Yugoslavia? It's like, no. It was like, but the Hezbollah or Iranian embassy. That's what I want to know. Of course, I want to know about like the North Koreans or the Chinese or the Russians in Germany, right? If I'm chief there, he didn't give a shit about any of that. He's got one job and one job only, and that's what they focus on. And they get good at it.
Yeah.
And they need to be good at it. So, but I will also say that if I understand this correctly, the Lebanese operation. So with Hezbollah, the pagers, what's going on, that's Mossad's territory. Now Shin Bet, their internal service, their MI5, it's not the FBI, but their intelligence version of the FBI does Gaza. And it was one of the worst intelligence failures in Israeli history.
Right.
It's like that for years we found out that the leadership of Hamas was able to pull the wool over the Israelis' eyes and make them think that that they were not interested in fighting, that they were interested in a truce, that this could never happen. And then they built these tunnels, and they gathered all this money and weapons, training, and they sprung it, and the Israelis didn't have a friggin' clue. Yeah, okay, there's a couple of people who are like, oh yeah, the day before I sort of kind of figured it out. Well, that's like Pearl Harbor. It's like, yeah, but I'm not sure it would have made a huge difference. So they're really good if it's Israeli intelligence, but they made like, 1,200 people were killed, and they took over a huge hunk of Israel, a huge hunk of the border area, and they didn't even know it was coming, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they're good, but they're intelligence officers. They're human beings just like the rest of us.
Well, how about this then? Who's number 2 in the world behind U.S., you think?
No, the Israelis are pretty freaking good for their area.
For their area.
Yeah, I think, the intelligence organizations that I have really been impressed with, the Brits are smaller. They limit themselves to certain things too, but they are very competent when they put their minds to things. Love the Brits, married to one. But I gotta say, they always come to us with, we got a great idea. All you got to do is give us money and people and resources, and then we'll do it together. It was like, yeah, all right. The Dutch are great. Dutch are a really fine intelligence service. And then the Australians are really good too for their neighborhood. And then you get some, some others who would surprise you. The Dutch would surprise you. Um, Weirdly, so the French we've always had not a solid relationship with the French and French services, but when it comes to counterterrorism, they are ruthless and effective because it impacts on them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I would say I would have told you before 9/11, the French are like, they're almost as much of a, with friends like the French, you don't need enemies. And I would completely change my mind on that. Now the French are actually, pretty friggin' good.
Wow.
Japanese are terrible.
I mean, the question is, are the Russians and Chinese any good?
Yeah, they're good, but in a way we would never want to be. They kill people, they hurt people.
Okay.
I mean, they are. So there's a difference between. No, I think this is a really good question. Actually, this is. It's important not to mix what they do and what we do. We're not the same. We are a foreign intelligence organization, CIA, MI6, and Europeans. We collect intelligence through various means to inform our policymakers. The Russians are a security service. Their job is to defend Vladimir Putin's regime, and they don't stand for anything. They are corrupt, venal, brutal. They don't. The rule of law doesn't really matter to them. So yeah, I don't even see that. I mean, they're rivals, but they're not fellow intelligence officers. They're security service guys. They are, agents of, really of. I don't know how they sleep at night, but they get paid. They do. But
Chinese just as bad as the Russians, or not on the same level?
I don't think they're as aggressive as the Russians, but that almost makes them more dangerous, right? They're, Russians are. I mean, let's be clear here. There have been, the Russians are looking to. The Russians will kill people on American soil, dissidents. They've killed. They've used nerve agents and that could have killed thousands in England to kill people. Polonium, they've killed people in the UK.
Yeah.
They've blown up houses in the Czech Republic, killed lots of people because it was near a munitions factory. They're involved in sabotage against NATO, US military bases. They are like, they're fucking bastards. Chinese don't do that. Chinese, they're basically trying to get into our computers and into our SCADA systems and things like that.
Interesting.
So they're more insidious in a lot of ways because they're, but the MSS is such a big organization. The MSS, like the North Koreans, they're also involved. They're not just a security organization. The same with the Russians. They raise money. The Russian service, the Chinese service, they're involved in banking. They're involved in real estate. They run whorehouses. I mean, the MS people run the MSS are fucking incredibly wealthy through, all sorts of like ways where they get around the law and run factories and things like that. So can you imagine, the CIA like running Boeing at the same time, right? That's how they work, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't have systems like that. It's hard for Westerners to get their minds around it. So, in CIA, you eventually you get a pension, you're off after, you're 50, you're 60. It's like, okay, time to go. And here's, you get enough to live on, it's like just enough to live on. You still have to work, by the way. And with them, it's like you're multimillionaire. You can go take over a head of a company that they run from behind the scenes. North Koreans, and I'll quick throw this in, North Koreans, in weird ways, they have to earn money to support themselves and to send cash back to the leadership. So that's what they do. They raise money. And when I was in Southern Africa, you sit down with the people who work for like the World Wildlife Fund or places like that. It's if there's one thing you could do to save African wildlife, the rhino and the elephant, what would it be? It's close the North Korean embassies. They have diplomatic immunity, so they can buy rhino horn and elephant tusk from the poachers. And even if they're caught, they can tell the police, like, fuck off. We're diplomats. We have diplomatic, you can't arrest us. How do they smuggle? How did they get it out? They put it in the diplomatic pouch, which no one is allowed to touch, and they send it back to the markets into China and they sell it.
Wow.
And how do they pay for it? Well, they don't have money. They pay for it with counterfeit U.S. $100 super notes that Hezbollah prints, and they also pay for it through knockoff AKs that the poachers use to kill elephants and each other, right? So the North Korean intelligence service, security service, is out like making money and threatening extinction of African wildlife. So yeah, I'm as a CIA officer, I'm really happy working against them. Welcome to that world.
Man, it's so fascinating. So fascinating. Okay, couple last things.
All right.
Give me your opinion on Assange and Snowden.
Fuck them.
Okay?
Yeah.
How come?
Assange is back. They're both guilty. They're both. I don't know how they sleep at night. Snowden, I'm convinced. I can't prove it, no, but I'm convinced he was working for the Russians beforehand, right before he left from Hawaii. And why did he end up in Russia? He ran off to like, where was it? He went off to someplace in China. I can't remember what city it was, maybe Hong Kong or someplace. And he spent the night in the Russian embassy, and then he flew there. The worst thing that happened to him is he could live in Russia for the rest of his life. I think he needs to go to jail for the rest of his life for what he did. And I know people who knew him when he was on the inside, and he's a fucked up person. He's no hero. And as for Assange, he manipulated our American election and was involved with the Russians in running stolen, stuff stolen by Cozy Bear and Fancy Bear, the GRU and the SVR were stealing from American political organizations and then uploading it to manipulate our elections and how we go. So this guy is, both of them have sold their souls. So Assange is out. He was also up on 2 rape charges in Sweden. So, I hope that motherfucker ends up in jail for the rest of his life. I do not wish him well.
Okay.
Fuck. We have in CIA there was always this joke, it was like we get cables, right? This is how we communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And then you'd ask a question, and the cable would come in from headquarters, or the field would send a note to headquarters about how they feel about something. It would say, the cable would just simply say, "Fuck you," strong message to follow. So that's what I feel about Assange and Snowden. Fuck you, and then I'll tell you what I really think.
Tell me about the CIA Memorial Wall. What is it? Tell me about what it represents, what it's all about.
It's people who sacrificed their lives in the line of duty.
Okay.
And I know a number of the stars there.
Because I see them in movies, obviously, and you see the stars, and so it's people who have sacrificed in the line of duty. You get...
Some are known, some are not.
Yeah.
And I have friends of mine up there. People who've, taken, again, for all you believers in the deep state out there, fuck you too. There's like, these are guys who've taken big pay cuts, put their lives on the line, and have paid the ultimate sacrifice for doing what the right thing is, defending the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And they, and all they get is a star on the wall, and they don't even get their name to put up, right? I mean, that's they don't get, these guys are not they don't get graves in Arlington. They don't get parades. They don't get any of this stuff. Just all they get is when you leave our building and you walk out the main entrance over the CIA seal, there's always somebody standing there, somebody touching one of the stars. And there's one particular friend of mine who went to Harvard, got a law degree, and gave it up to be a GS-13. And then he said, this friend of mine said, he worked for me, and when I was in Afghanistan, he was on the desk, and when I came back, he worked for me, and he said, and he's an immigrant to the United States. He emigrated to the United States, spoke 5 languages, went to Harvard, got a law degree, and said, I want to serve my country, my new country. I want to earn my citizenship more than just that. And so he took a job as a GS-13, making $78,000 a year, and he gave it up to go to Afghanistan to shit in a slit trench and was killed and left behind a wife and everything, and parents who didn't understand why he did this. and all he's got's a little star on the wall and no name.
What's it? What's the reasoning behind no name? Why is it just the
It's
stars?
undercover. Some are undercover and some are not. Some we roll the cover back on, some we don't. It's up to the families to a certain extent.
Okay.
It's up to whether it's out there or not. So there's several books out there that claim that, they've got most of the names. Some of the names we are publicly available, and some are not. Some
Yeah.
are never.
Well, for example, the guy with Argo in the movie Argo, I think he won one.
No, he didn't win a star.
Oh, he didn't?
No, stars in the wall are only for people who are killed in the line of duty.
Oh.
You don't get a star. We don't do, so CIA, we don't do medals, right? We don't do awards.
Okay, so the movie just totally, because that made him sound like he got a medal that he had to store away in the vault.
That's true.
And then,
That's true. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But you know what? I've got medals, and it's like, see, we don't wear them. We don't do that. We're not like the military.
Yeah.
We don't walk around with, that's not bad or good. It's which we don't do that.
Right.
Right. So nobody knows what you won or what you haven't won or anything like that.
But getting back to the wall, I mean, unless it was like a super secret operation that they don't want you to know about, if they've passed away, if they've been killed, why not put their names up there?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons.
Okay.
Some may not be, I'll just say, some may not be officially U.S. citizens. Like we could have somebody who is a citizen of another country and he's a covert U.S. citizen. We don't want to have that out there that's who he was.
Oh.
We may have somebody out there that he was killed and he was involved in an operation where people are still alive and still operating, that if it came out that is, oh, that's the guy, who was he talking to? Oh.
Yeah.
Then suddenly, this guy or even their family. So let's be clear in this. You're a law enforcement officer. What would you say about a man commits a crime and you go out and you arrest and execute his kids? Wrap your head around that. Welcome to like Russia, North Korea, China to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Right. So, so if you're involved in an operation and we don't want, we're looking to protect the kids, so there's a lot of reasons for it. And I don't know. And I'm guessing, I don't know the reasons. A lot of them are, and more people are, or sometimes wives just say, or wives or husbands or family just, I just don't want to know. Conspiracy theorists start showing up at your door, right? It's like, oh, it's like, the space aliens and shit like that. So, a lot of people just don't want that bother.
Okay, 2 last questions for you, Jerry. Your family. You have kids. Your wife was not an operative, but she was involved in the agency.
She became a citizen, and then she joined the agency. Yeah.
How much did you keep what you did secret from your kids?
Sorta, but they didn't really. I mean, you're dead. You're a schlub. Right?
Yeah. But did they know what you did?
No. So the agency is. We've got all sorts of rules and regulations coming out the wazoo for almost everything, but for something that you would think is so important, when you make your children, we call it making them witting of your agency affiliation. When and how you make your kids witting is totally up to you. So, when they're little, you just tell them, Dad works for, I'm the third secretary, economic for, law. They're like, Dad, like, I'm watching the cartoons, like they don't care. You're dead. You're
right.
You're dad. So how we did it. So most people basically, and it's a little like the birds and the bees, right? You don't want to tell them too early, right? Before they understand. You don't want to wait for them to hear about it on the school bus, right? So get it wrong. So you generally wait until you're back in the States. And we spent most of our time abroad. So you wait till you're back in the States and you think they're ready for it. And, and then you have to decide, just like, you can tell 1, 2, or 3 of them at the same time. Can they keep secrets from each other? And it's a big deal to a certain extent because you're telling them that you've lied to them their whole life, right? B, you're asking them now to lie for you, right? And they're going to have a lot of questions. So how we did it, we had 3 girls and we decided that we couldn't tell them separately. And we had just come back from living abroad. And funny story. So my middle daughter, she never really lived in the States. She wanted to be an American. And I think she was um, sophomore in high school. So she shows up at an American high school. I'm going to be an American now. She's been lived most of her life abroad. And so she tries out for the cheer team. She's going to be a cheerleader. This is all, what could be more American than that, right? And my wife and I talked and we said, oh, let's take the kids to family day. And yet we have a family day at CIA for those people who are declared, who kids, your family that's witting. And so we thought, okay, we'll take them all to family day, which is on a Saturday. So for my middle daughter, of course she hadn't been doing cheer for a long time, and there was a practice on that Saturday, and apparently they had a big match coming up, and they had to practice. And we told her that you're going to have to tell your coach that you can't show up on Saturday. You got something going on. We can't, And she's like, what? I'm like, just trust us. You got something going on. And so she told her coach, and her coach said, Pippa, it's her name. He said, Pippa, you need to you need to show more dedication, right? He's like, if you want to make this cheer team. She says, but you're the fourth girl to bow out on this Saturday practice. So, okay, I guess it doesn't matter. So we put the three girls in the car, and we took a left off of 123 into the driveway the drive that goes up to the CIA main gates, and there's the signs out there, restricted access, turn around, don't come here, forbidden, verboten. And I make that turn, and I'm driving. My girls don't know where we're going. They're like, Dad, you can't, turn around, Dad. You can't be here. And so I dropped the penultimate bomb on them. I said, well, there's something I got to tell you. It's like, I work for CIA. And they're like, what? And then the bomb hit. Their mother turned around and said, and so do I, darlings. And we came in, and guess where the other girls from the cheer squad were? So Pippa walks in, and she's like, whoa, like all these other kids are, because it's within driving distance of the agency. And so she's like, afterwards, she's like, Dad, I am in the coolest club you can possibly be in, but you can't join and you can't get out of it, and nobody knows you're in it except if you're in it. It's like Fight Club, And she's like, and now I got this secret set of connections. And now the girls who are in it, who are at family day, they're like, well, that cute boy over there, you could talk to him. She's like, oh, where did he serve? He was in Bosnia. Oh, so next thing you know, there's the kids in the high school. There's this secret group. And as far as I know, none of the kids ever blabbed. But, and they actually didn't care all that much. They're like, they had a few questions, but yeah, it was pretty anticlimactic.
How about, you had alluded to this, how about dating within the CIA?
Well, we talked about the farm real briefly, and most people come in single, and it is also the world's most expensive dating game, right? It's like a lot of people get married there. But what most people are interested in on the sex in the CIA is we have some peculiar and very strict rules about dating foreigners, not Americans. And we have these rules for counterintelligence reasons, right? It has nothing to do, we're not the moralities police, we don't give a shit. But we want to make sure that if you're dating someone, that they are not controlled by the Russians, that they haven't been sent against you, that, that there's issues. And so we have issues like, I think I can say, cohabitation. You can't live with a foreigner if you're an agency officer. So and then you get weird things like, well, what's cohabitation? Is it 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week, 2 nights a week, half a night? So we have oh God. So, if you're a chief of station, you got to be like, well, I was there for 2 nights, and then I was there for but I left at 2 a.m, but we only talked. I'm like, I don't care, It's like, no, you're not cohabitating. You can't give them a key to your apartment. And, so there are these rules like this. And then when you finally decide that he or she is the one, you have to write into headquarters and say, I'd like permission to marry this foreigner. And what they tell you to do is, the way it works is you have to write a letter of resignation, which I did. And they say that if this doesn't go well, we may accept that letter of resignation. And so when you ask so they say, okay, you can tell your intended who you work for, your fiance, and then you have to tell them, A, they have to become an American citizen, and B, they have to take a polygraph.
Hmm.
And the polygraph, to be clear, is, are you a spy? Are you controlled? Are you,
Yeah.
and this is what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And but not everybody gets through, and they don't get through for the reasons you might think. So say, I know, so if you fall in love, say, with someone from from Iran, Iranian American, not, or Iranian German, and like, yeah, they're good, but their cousins can be blackmailed, right? The Iranians, so that suddenly, let's say, an American, and even in Americans that, although we don't polygraph Americans, that will probably sit down and have a discussion. It's like, if there's an Iranian American, it's like, if your cousin writes you and says they're going to go to prison unless you like do X, Y, or Z with your new husband or new wife, what are you going to do? And that becomes like, a lot of people are like, you know what, maybe this is not a job for us.
Mm.
And then the last thing on that too is, when I came into the agency back in '84, you couldn't be gay. It was decided that if you're gay, it is blackmailable. And so we went through a number. So we only hired straight folks, we thought. And what was turning out was we were hiring a lot of people who were in the closet. Some people, because polygraph is, it's voodoo, right? It works sort of, but doesn't really.
Mm-hmm.
It measures your reactions, and they can, they can do card tricks, but it can't really, like, are you gay if you've never been involved in gay sex, but you're not sure if you are or whatever. So like, we had people who were like, a Mormon dad with 6 kids suddenly decides he's gay, right? And like, oh, now like all this like fucked up in this. So I think they've come around to a really much better thing. Is if you're doing something that's blackmailable, that's an issue.
Yeah.
So if you're gay and out of the closet, like, who the fuck gives a shit, right?
All right.
And so we have gay lesbian alliance in the agency, and we have gay officers that still have issues, but the issues tend to be, if you're single gay officer and you're going to go to Saudi Arabia, or Zimbabwe, for example, where I do know I've served there, and it's 12 years for a first offense for sodomy, right? In fact, you don't even have to. They have where the deviancy. If they decide you're deviant, whatever that means, that's what they decide. So if you go there and you like start to date a local, do you really want to place that person in that danger, right? You're okay, you're a diplomat, but whoever so we, that creates certain issues for the agency that we need to work through. But and other places won't give, if you're a married couple and if there's 2 lesbians and they want to go live in Iraq together at the embassy, it's like, you may not get a visa for that, right?
Yeah.
They're like fuck you, we don't do that. So there still are problems, less so inside the agency, more with how the agency deals with sex outside.
Yeah.
And so, but we're not the morals police. That's not our job.
Right.
It really boils down to whether there's a counterintelligence issue and whether you can be blackmailed for it.
Okay. Last question for you, Jerry. Sure. Really fascinated to get your answer on this, because when I talk to,
like the other questions you've asked.
Well,
I haven't titillated you.
It's been a very, very interesting conversation, but this one I'm super interested in respect that, I ask law enforcement guys about, can they look back on when they first started their law enforcement career to when they retire, and how it's changed their views on people and society. And, law enforcement guys are always dealing with the worst of the worst and everything else. But man, you've been in multiple different countries, probably seen some pretty bad things too. But then you get to come back to the US. So what's your take on that? Can you look back on when you joined the agency, and has your views changed on people, or maybe they've changed only on certain countries, or explain that to me?
No, not on people. They have changed on governments.
Okay.
And Winston Churchill said democracy is the worst form of government until you compare it to all the others. And what I have found is that perfectly good people will do awful things if incentivized to do by a government, right, or a lack of by rules, or a lack of rules. So, places like Somalia where I have not been, but Pakistan where, or Afghanistan where I have been, when it's the rule of tooth and claw. I've got guns, you don't, fuck you, you're going to do what I say. Chaos, nihilism, that's really dangerous. And the other side is, I've sat down and I've talked to North Koreans and I've looked in their eyes and seen absolute fucking terror that, oh my God, if anybody sees me talking to you, what they will do to me and my family, right? And so, perfectly good people need to be incentivized through guardrails and a set of rules and regulations that we all agree on consensus wise, right? That we elect leaders to Congress that we all make fun of, but they represent us and we come up with sort of the rule of law and we are blessed with the American Constitution and, defending the ideals within that, I think sets us apart, is what sets that and the respect for it and people willing to sacrifice for it for the last 250 years. Um, um, Law enforcement and civil servants and soldiers and agency guys. That's what sets us and other Western countries, the Germans, the Australians, the Canadians, sets us apart from like the rest of the world. I've seen some really good things. I've seen some really bad things. And I'll leave you with maybe one last story that made me feel really good and really bad about like sort of the state of things. And it was, it's a long story, but I'll keep it tight. We, through a series of misadventures, we had determined where this is in northern Afghanistan when we were hunting Al Qaeda, we call them squirters, but people who had squirted from the Kunduz pocket and were on the run in northern Afghanistan. And we were looking for Al Qaeda guys. And we had a informer come in and tell us where one was. And we screwed up 2 or 3 times, and it was hilarious and ridiculous, but we ended up in front of the right place. And it's like it's like a fortress, like a castle kind of thing made out of again, like the Alamo, mud bricks all around. And we showed up with what we call ourselves, Team Bravo. We had 30 or 40, it was basically, we had as many Tajik fighters as you could stick on 2 trucks. And as we went through villages, Team Bravo got bigger or smaller depending on who jumped on and who jumped off. And of course, headquarters is like, we need to know the names and birth dates and ID numbers of everybody on Team Bravo. And if they have a weapon, we need to know the serial number. And as we're driving through a village in this Kamaz truck, we like slow down, 5 guys jump on, 7 guys jump off, and we drive on again. I'm like, the fuck, I don't know. And here's what I do know is Team Bravo is run by this one guy. And basically he tells me, yeah, we got 70 guys. I'm like, they look more like 50 to me. He's like, no, there's 70. And I want $50 a day per guy. And I'll give it to them. He's like, he never gave it to them. He gave him $5 or something like that. So I was like, okay. So I just as long as you sign a receipt, there you go. So anyway, we end up, crack Team Bravo leaps off and we go into this place, and in the kitchen are 3 flagstones, and if you pull them up, there's a place where you can hide down below the kitchen floor under these stones. And we went in and we're looking for them. We don't find them, but we've got somebody who's told us they're in there, so we're pretty sure they're in there. And one of the people in the place goes, I'm sorry, this is audio, points like, look under this floor. And so they do, and there he was. So they got turned in by the own people. So they were not popular. They weren't like the families, the 12 families living in there, they didn't like these guys as far as we could tell. But the chief, the emir of the place, he said, hold them. So we pull them out, and one is Arab and he is Yemeni. And I'll just say it, he's very feminine, but he speaks English, and he's an engineer, and he's, and then we pulled out his 2 IMU, or the Uzbek It's the Uzbek faction of Al Qaeda, and they're clearly his two bodyguards. You know, they're big galoots, don't fuck with me, linebacker kind of guys. And we pull them out, and it's like, okay, we got two pipe hitters and a guy who's like clearly, you know, he's a leadership sort of guy, and although he's young, and we took him out through the two Uzbeks in one truck, and through the Al Qaeda Yemeni in the other truck to take him away. And the head of the guy who ran that castle thing, I said to the head of Team Bravo, I said, I want him arrested under your authorities. I want him arrested because he's hiding Al Qaeda. And he's like, my name was Sean in those days. I was working under alias. And he says, oh, Mr. Sean, he says, that's not the agreement. Like, what agreement? There's no agreement. We got an informant told us that guy was in there, and, you know, you're Team Bravo, so take him away. And he's like, yeah, Mr. Sean, we can't do that. Like, we need to go now. Now. And he's like looking at me like, let's get the fuck out of here while we can. And I'm like, all right. Like, we can go back and arrest him later, I guess. I don't know. Like, I trust the guy I'm working with. I trust him to cheat me, but I also trust him to keep me alive, right? So it was like, okay, let's go. And as we're getting ready to go, the guy, the Yemeni, we've got, you know, he's blindfolded so he doesn't hurt anybody. And as we're pulling out, the chief, the emir, like waves this plaintive goodbye. He's like waves to this guy like, oh, he's leaving me. And he's like drives off and the guy can't even see. I'm like, what the fuck is that? So we separate them out and we get off to a safe space, not a safe house, but a safe area. And the helos are going to come take these guys away. And I'm going to sit and I'm going to talk to the Yemen and see if he's willing to talk to him. I'm going to interrogate him. I'm going to just ask him some questions, right? I'm not going to touch him. So he's in there. And I walk in and he looks at me like I'm the Gestapo. And in the meantime, a piece I missed. So before I go in, my Tajik, so I work with these guys a lot. And we don't speak the same language, but I know them. And there's this weird vibe going on, and they're all tittering, you know, tee-hee, giggling, and like there's something funny going on. And like I go to the head of Team Brown, I'm like, look, you tell me we had to get out of there. Everybody's sort of like, there's this weird vibe going on, giggly vibe. What's going on? Oh, he goes, well, he says, here's the deal. He says, the head of that cult, the head of that place, he's the local warlord, and he's your ally. He's on the Northern Alliance. He's like pro-America. And he's, you know, he fought for you guys. And like, he's up. He says, however, he's a drug guy, right? He makes heroin. But Taliban hasn't been great for heroin, and it was pretty clear that the Taliban was going to lose. So he just switched sides. So he's like, you know, for today, he's with you, right? At least for the next couple of weeks or until he changes his mind. So like, okay. He says, this guy, the Al Qaeda guy, came to him and said, if you hide me, you got to bet on the come here, but if you hide me, I will take your raw heroin. And Al Qaeda has, you know, through Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, we have our own rat lines. I can run your heroin into Europe, and you can keep 50% of it. Right now, you only get like 10%. But if you hide me, I will make you rich. And he says, but I can't do that now. You got to hide me until I can set this up. Now I'm paying several $1,000s per person. And he's like, well, I can get a couple of thousand for these three goons. I can get $15,000, $20,000, but I could get millions if I like can hide this guy. Well, one of his guys like ratted him out, and it was eventually going to happen. So basically, what happened before we went there, like 5 Tajik warlords, the over warlord, the over under warlord, they all like worked this deal out. It's like, dude, you got caught. They know about you, you know, because he keeps 50%, but he's got to give some to his boss and then to the next boss, right? And so they all got caught, and they're all our allies, and so like, oh, okay, like this guy's probably not going to come out anyway. So they let us take him. But he says, but if we arrested the warlord, we got to drive through his territory. And all his guys have got guns and they all got cell phones. We could all get shot up for arresting one of your friggin' allies, right? And it's like, if you're going to arrest him, wait till he goes to a city or something, but we'll never be able to come back here again because he's a hereditary warlord. And his family's big. So he's like, okay. He says, yeah, so there's two reasons that this guy, Muttalib Beg, that he keeps him. And one is because of the drugs. Well, what's the other reason? He says, well, Muttalib Beg likes young boys. Oh, so he's been stooping this guy. He's like, yeah, he's basically his sex toy. Because he doesn't want to like fuck his own people, his own men, right? Because A, that's sinful, and B, he could, if you shit in your own nest, you can get in trouble, right? The father-in-law may kill you. You got to be careful which young boy you go after, right? And so, but Muttalib Beg's like, okay, this guy can't say no, right? He's not interested in the two IMU guys, but he's interested in this effeminate young man. So I go, knowing this, I go in to talk to the guy. And he doesn't want to talk to me, and he clearly speaks some English. And I finally say, look, I know you're gay. And like, in my society, that's okay. Now he's willing to talk. And he says, I'm not gay. I'm not homosexual. I'm like, look, I know what was going on back there. I know about you and Muttalib Beg. And he's like, yeah. He goes, here's what, and this is now fucking serious. He looks at me and he says, he says, you started it. I'm like, 9/11, you started it. He goes, no, he says, you are in 9/11. You are in our living room. He says, turn on the TV. What do I see? My nieces, they see foreign whores that show their arms and sit in a bar and drink alcohol, right? And dance in public. He goes, this is sinful. This is deviant. You're in my living room showing this stuff. You're bringing rock and roll music into my living room. You were like, your culture, your way of life is like assaulting my way of life. And you are evil. And he's like, we're just striking back. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. That's his way of looking at it. And you know what? He's right. We don't look at nobody. Well, they don't have, Al Qaeda doesn't believe in music, right? So we're not listening to their music. We're not listening. They don't dance either. So we're not listening to their dance. But we have this dynamic, attractive culture that we don't even realize in the West. And he's like, we're fighting back against you. And he says, you know what? And this is where it gets really serious. He says, basically, if I have to get fucked by an Afghan warlord, if I have to run drugs, just to have the chance to kill you, I'll do it. And he says, we're going to win. He says, we're going to win because we're more dedicated than you are. You have no idea how dedicated we are to our cause. That's why we're going to win eventually. And I looked at him and I thought, there's no fucking way they're going to win. Like, they're not going to ever take Afghanistan back. Yeah. So I learned that we have real enemies and we need to keep our eye on the ball. We need to be patient, and we need a military. We need law enforcement. We need intelligence agencies, because people like that, be they communist or Nazis or, Islamic zealots, those people, those ideologies are out there and they are our bitter enemies, and we should not be tolerant of their intolerance. And so that is one thing that kept me up for years and made me feel really good about what you and me and our brethren in the military do, and all the people in the deep state who serve in silence and for less money than they could get elsewhere. And so I think people are good. I think ideologies make good people bad. I mean, that kid could have gone out with my daughter, right? He was like the right age, nice kid, educated, but he was in the grips of an awful ideology of what I think. And there's no compromise with them. So, yeah. So probably more than you wanted. It wasn't short, but it's what makes agency officers, I think, by and large, it's what keeps us going and keeps us committed and enthused and willing to make sacrifices.
Jerry, thanks for the interview. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.